Millie recognizes the name Rothenhaupt and realizes she is speaking to royalty. A blond man introduces himself as the king's younger brother, asking if she remembers him. Flustered, Millie addresses him as Your Highness, but he smiles and tells her to call him Al. Al looks at her fondly, reminding her of a promise they made long ago. He confidently tells a confused Millie that he's already prepared for it. Leaning closer, he asks a shocked Millie when they should get started. Her shriek of utter shock echoes through the air. The scene shifts to a grand white royal castle. In a flashback, Baron Robert Gonzara instructs his daughter, Millie, that everyone wears shoes in the capital. The Baron's daughter, Muriel, finds the idea of wearing shoes in summer strange and hot. Robert explains that women in the capital don't hunt, leaving Muriel to wonder how they get food. Her father explains they buy food, a concept that completely bewilders her. He clarifies that stores sell meat and vegetables, but Muriel remains confused. An explanation reveals that people in the Gonzara territory go barefoot outside of winter. Shoes are reserved for special occasions, as the people make or barter for most goods. For items they cannot produce, like shoes and cloth, they must wait for merchants to visit. In a chibi flashback, her father burdens her with the costs of rent, living expenses, and tuition. Crushed beneath the weight of her expenses, her spirit floats away, asking if she understands the situation. Her father gives her a thumbs up, delivering his ultimate mission: catch a man with money. He adds that skills, however, are an even more valuable asset. Back in the present, Millie scoffs at the idea, doubting she could ever attract a wealthy man. Her family's true motives are revealed. They plan to use her dowry to buy a horse and improve the harvest. They also dream of repairing the castle walls to protect the village from monsters. A skilled husband could provide medicine, just as her sister Marina's accountant husband reduced her father's paperwork. A group of elderly women offer to help Millie on her great mission with their wisdom and techniques. The women frankly assess her as kind but tomboyish, and only cute upon closer inspection. Their first secret technique is to cross one's arms to create cleavage, which Millie hesitantly tries. The second technique is to reach for things with the farther hand, which they claim looks more alluring. The third technique involves casually touching a man, but Millie rejects the idea outright. Fed up, Millie declares that a man should like her for who she is, not for some act. An old woman counters with a metaphor, saying that even if you love meat, you still need salt. A merchant is told that the price for passage is a non-negotiable 10 silver coins. Robert argues that Muriel's bodyguard skills are worth a fee of 10 silver coins, but the merchant scoffs. The local children marvel at Muriel's hidden muscles, much to her own confusion. To prove her strength, Robert challenges the merchant to test her in a sparring match. A large, intimidating man steps forward to accept the challenge. In an instant, Muriel evades his attack and expertly places him in a chokehold. When the merchant complains about needing food, Robert says they can procure it. Muriel demonstrates her skill by expertly taking down a large bird with a single stone from her sling. Impressed, the merchant reluctantly pays 5 silver coins for her bodyguard services. Muriel happily accepts her fee, while her father grumbles about the cost of her trip. Her family sees her off with well wishes, reminding her not to return empty-handed. They shout after her to bring back a rich man, or several, as she rides away with an awkward smile. Her small carriage begins its long journey toward the capital. The sprawling royal capital and its majestic castle come into view. Arriving in the bustling city, Muriel waves goodbye to her driver. She gasps in awe, completely overwhelmed by the sights and sounds of the capital. Suddenly, a thief snatches a purse and sprints past her as a voice cries out to stop him. A brown-haired girl fiercely kicks a man. A blonde girl tearfully expresses her thanks. She continues her heartfelt, grateful thanks. A guard arrives, asking about the commotion. She eagerly wonders if he's husband material. The guard thanks her and takes custody of the man. She immediately asks the guard about his marriage prospects. She watches him go, disappointed by the missed opportunity. The blonde girl insists on treating her at a cafe. She smiles, a picture of pure delight. The scene shifts to a lavish cafe with incredible desserts. Overwhelmed, the brown-haired girl asks if it's a mansion. The blonde girl laughs it off. The blonde girl explains the cafe's popularity as her friend marvels at the city's wonders. A maid leads them through the elegant establishment. She imagines the incredible comfort of the plush chairs. Her new friend generously offers to treat her to anything on the menu. The menu's unfamiliar items leave her completely bewildered. The blonde girl suggests a tea that pairs well with milk. She recalls the intense labor required to harvest tea leaves. The price of 5 copper coins for tea completely stuns her. Her friend points out the popular cake, but its 7 copper price is another shock. She's shocked by the tiny cake, then tries to calm down as the blonde girl Myriel offers her sugar. Myriel asks if she takes sugar in her tea. She accepts the offer with delighted enthusiasm. Sudden realization dawns. It's maple sugar. She pictures the precious golden maple sap. A memory surfaces of boiling sap until it thickens. This difficult process makes the sugar incredibly precious. She recalls it as a rare birthday treat, just 1 small spoonful. She savors the nostalgic taste, a blissful smile on her face. Her reflection appears in the surface of the tea. Her loud, joyful reaction startles a surprised Myriel. She apologizes, explaining her family's tradition of shouting, "Thanks" before a meal. Myriel laughs, finding the custom endearing. A sip of tea sends an electric shock of sweetness through her. She blissfully enjoys a bite of delicious cake. Every bite is pure, sweet happiness. But the awaited divine revelation never came. Myriel offers another cake, and she happily accepts. She collapses in guilt, having devoured the expensive cake in just 2 bites. Myriel reassures her, saying unsold cakes are just thrown out anyway. Myriel then worries that eating only cake might make her sick. The brown-haired girl sees her as a benevolent angel. She is moved to tears by this incredible kindness. A handsome man appears, and she is instantly captivated by him. Myriel immediately asks if she wants an introduction, flustering her friend. Myriel finds it hilarious, revealing the man is the brown-haired girl's dad. The brown-haired girl, Millie, laughs, lamenting how her father expects her to find a man that amazing. Myriel gives her a knowing, playful wink. She takes her hand, promising her full support. Millie and Myriel enjoy their lavish spread of desserts at the cafe. The scene shifts to a grand carriage, signaling a journey is underway. Inside, Millie smiles softly as she gazes out the window at the passing scenery. Myriel gives a final, supportive wink before their parting. Millie arrives at a large, charming house, realizing this is where she'll be staying. She bursts through the front door, startling the residents by loudly introducing herself as Muriel. A woman with brown hair sweats nervously, thinking a man is hot as she looks at a couple. Millie admits she forgot city habits, so Myriel explains that one uses a doorbell to call people. Fascinated by the concept, Millie spots the doorbell and points it out. An older woman in a maid's uniform opens the door, asking who it is. Millie politely introduces herself as Muriel Gonzara, ready to begin her stay. A flashback shows a proud, handsome man with a goatee smiling warmly. The maid calls her Shirley dear, but Millie feels the name doesn't fit, thinking of her beautiful mother. Millie wonders if it's natural that she doesn't resemble her mother, as the maid looks on sympathetically. Following the maid upstairs, she asks to be called Millie, as Dear feels awkward. She is utterly delighted by the cute and perfect room, and the maid smiles at her reaction. Millie holds a heavy bag of coins, recalling her father's stern order to never let it go. She frantically searches the room for the perfect place to hide her money. After securing her funds, she looks fondly at a small wooden doll. Millie offers a large pile of sparkling gold coins to the stunned maid. She presents the payment to the couple, insisting it's necessary for her long stay. She boldly offers to pay with her body, then quickly clarifies she meant through labor, shocking them. Millie lists her many skills, including hunting, and offers to handle all the housework. The maid accepts her offer, mentioning her aching knees, and Millie eagerly agrees to help. A quick montage shows Millie energetically scrubbing floors and carrying laundry. Kia! The maid wakes with a start to find Millie, a shadowy figure, already hard at work before dawn. Millie turns with a cheerful apology, asking if she woke the still flustered maid. She brightly offers to make breakfast right away, asking how the maid likes her eggs. The maid declines, explaining she must work and tells Millie to sit and relax instead. She kindly offers to brew some tea for them. The maid sips the tea, complimenting its delicious taste and crediting Millie's training from Shirley. Millie beams, sharing her mother's wisdom that good tea is the first step to finding a good man. With classes starting tomorrow, Millie plans to stroll around town and buy dinner ingredients. Millie steps out into the bustling town, ready to explore on her own. While watching a baker, she overhears a transaction costing 5 copper coins. A perfectly prepared hot dog sparkles, looking irresistibly delicious. She recalls her father's stern lesson: her allowance is the people's tax money, precious as blood. Those words were drilled into her throughout her entire upbringing. A memory surfaces of using her tiny allowance to buy a simple doll. In a flashback, her father instructs her to thank the villagers whose taxes paid for her 3 copper doll. As a little girl, she politely thanks the local villagers before asking to buy the doll. Receiving permission, little Millie joyfully hugs her precious new toy. Back in the present, she spots deer by a lake, knowing animals always gather near water. With practiced skill, she hurls a large rock toward her target. The rock finds its mark with a powerful impact. She returns to the surprise of a local man, casually carrying a whole deer over her shoulders. Onlookers stare and whisper as she walks confidently through the street with her kill. A curious local asks how she caught it, and she nonchalantly replies, "With a rock." Asked about her plans, she says she intends to butcher the deer at home. The locals suggest the butcher shop, where they'll do it for her and even buy the meat, leaving Millie thrilled. The deal is explained. She'll be paid for the meat, an idea that fills her with pure bliss. At the butcher shop, the owner is completely amazed that she caught such a fine animal herself. In a new green dress, she twirls for the couple, who tell her she looks cute and wonderful. She happily waves goodbye to the couple as she heads off for her first day. The scene shifts to a magnificent, grand academy building under a bright blue sky. She purposefully strides down a long, elegant hallway inside the academy. Millie spots a blonde-haired girl, Ilona, who greets her with a warm smile. Millie tearfully hugs Ilona, so relieved they're in the same group, and Ilona reveals she arranged it. Ilona winks, explaining that money solves most problems, leaving an impressed Millie to say, "Wow." A brown-haired man in a blue vest calls the class to order, telling everyone to take their seats. He introduces himself as Chris Fentress, a specialist in swordsmanship. Millie is instantly captivated by the idea of swordsmanship. The handsome instructor, Chris, repeats that his specialty is swordsmanship. Millie's internal monologue declares him well-built and wonderful, clearly seeing a potential husband. Her expression suddenly turns serious and determined. A memory surfaces of 2 older women warning her to be careful, even with wonderful men. The women continue their grim advice: do a background check, because the good ones are already taken. Remembering their words, Millie collapses onto her desk in utter despair. Without hesitation, Millie raises her hand and bluntly asks the instructor if he has a fiancé. An awkward, dead silence falls over the entire classroom. Chris just laughs, finding her boldness amusing and calling her an interesting one. He instructs the entire class to state whether they have a fiancé, delighting Millie and mortifying Ilona. The instructor calls for the next student, and an eager Millie responds, yes. She introduces herself as Muriel Gonzara, but asks to be called Millie, a baron's second daughter. She proudly announces her specialty is butchering and cooking her own game, stunning the silent classroom. Millie passionately lectures on the virtues of the rock as a free and fundamental weapon. Thwack! She hurls a rock straight through the open classroom window to prove her point. Excusing herself for a moment, she leaps dramatically out the window after it. Her feet hit the ground, and she takes off at a sprint. She deftly navigates the trees outside with practiced skill. Returning through the window, she proudly presents a bird, boasting it was caught with just 1 rock. A female student expresses her horror, calling it awful to kill such a cute little bird. Millie counters by asking if she eats cute cows and pigs, stating that's just how it is. Chris smiles, calling Mary amazing, and considers adding stone throwing to the curriculum, which thrills Millie. Millie passionately tells Professor Chris he's a wonderful, understanding single man, and he laughs at being hit on so directly. The professor asks to move on, but Millie requests to say one last thing. She publicly announces her search for a husband with specific skills, a willingness to marry into her family, and a large dowry. Another dead silence hangs in the air while Ilona hides her face, laughing. Millie recalls her father's advice to start with high standards, confident her plan will work. The class gathers outside in the courtyard for a practical lesson involving a grill. 2 of the girls look away, squeamish, as a knife is brought down on a cutting board. Millie cheerfully offers a freshly cooked skewer to the 2 squeamish girls. The entire class happily devours the food, remarking on how delicious and tasty it is. The girl who was initially horrified now happily admits the starling was delicious. Millie smiles, explaining that enjoying a meal makes it worthwhile, as long as you give thanks first. A narrator explains Muriel is now seen as dangerous, as one boy warns another she might knock him out with a rock and abduct him. A male classmate hands Millie a list of all the single men in the medicine course. The boy looks confused as she takes the list, wondering why she seems surprised. Millie suddenly understands his motive, realizing he wants some meat in exchange. He advises her to seek a husband from another class, offering to help, and she agrees with a thumbs up, promising him good meat. At her desk, Millie daydreams about her next hunt, drooling at the thought. She analyzes the provided list, noting a viscount's third son, and calculates she can expect a decent dowry. The boy struggles to reach a book on a high shelf, and Millie spots her opportunity. She approaches him to offer help, and the flustered boy thanks her. As he turns away blushing, Millie stands behind him with a confident, determined look. A spark ignites within her as she clenches her fist, realizing she's fallen in love at first sight. Her target is identified as the diligent medical student, Jake, which makes an ecstatic Millie declare him the best. She happily hands the book to Jake, who is taken aback. She effortlessly reaches over his shoulder to grab another book from the top shelf for him. Her closeness makes Jake tense up, while Millie suddenly looks nervous. A close-up reveals Jake's eyes are filled with angry tears as he blushes furiously. In a furious outburst, he yells at her to stop harassing him. Back in the classroom, he shouts that she doesn't have to show off just because he's short, leaving Millie confused. He begs her not to come near him anymore, leaving a stunned Millie completely speechless. Later, Millie lies defeated on her desk, as Ilona asks her what's wrong. Millie explains that Jake accused her of harassment, leaving Ilona equally confused. 3 male classmates explain that boys their age are very sensitive about their height. A boy clarifies that it's humiliating to be shorter than a girl, especially when needing her help in public, and Millie realizes her mistake. One of the boys gently tells her not to worry, as there are plenty of other potential husbands. Another classmate kindly reassures her that someone will definitely appreciate her for who she is. A third boy gives her a supportive thumbs up, telling her to just move on from the rejection. Millie smiles, thanking them for their encouragement before changing the subject. She bluntly asks if any of them want to marry her, shocking them into a stunned silence. The 3 boys politely decline, citing career plans in the capital and a preference for shorter girls. Millie looks away dejectedly, murmuring that it's too bad. One of the boys offers to help her in any way they can, and she immediately asks for advice on how to win over a man. The helpful group of friends gathers around a desk to come up with a plan. One of the boys asks for some time to think, and Millie patiently agrees. Bam! Thanking them for everything, Millie abruptly leaves for the day, announcing she's going hunting. After she's gone, the remaining group wonders what on earth they can say to help her. Ilona poses the first problem. What should they tell other guys who ask about Millie? A boy adds that her unmentioned marriage conditions and dowry would be a deal breaker, and they all nod in agreement. They begin brainstorming, suggesting they downplay her home's remoteness and avoid mentioning it only has one store. They all agree her hunting hobby is terrifying, and the thought of butchering animals gives them chills. The group falls silent, unable to think of any good selling points. They start listing her physical traits, but Ilona quickly shoots down a comment about her padded chest. They agree her long legs are an asset and suggest a shorter skirt since she isn't shy. A dark-haired boy suggests a length just above the knee, and Ilona salutes, vowing to get a tailor. The boys insist there must be more positive traits to find if they just look closer. One remembers she can cook, but another points out that noble ladies don't cook, which might make her seem poor. The group discusses that some makeup might help enhance her cuteness, and Ilona volunteers to try it. A quiet moment passes as they ponder their difficult task. Finally, they settle on a simple plan. They'll just tell everyone she's a really nice girl and call it a day. A dark-haired boy named Brad suggests that since she's in the night course, she should also consider combat-focused men. Millie questions this, thinking all the men in her territory are already trained to fight. Brad clarifies that they have enough knights, but some also learn medical techniques for field first aid. He proudly presents Millie with a list of such students, and she thanks the clever Brad as their friends applaud. Millie tries to convince Brad to come to her territory, but he explains his dream is to become a royal official in the capital. Millie decides to observe a few knights to assess them as potential husbands, thanking her friends for the idea. From an upper balcony, Millie watches as two men spar with wooden swords in a training courtyard below. A dark-haired man and an orange-haired man clash fiercely during their sparring match. Whoosh! The dark-haired man launches a swift, powerful strike with his wooden sword. The orange-haired man barely blocks the forceful blow, the impact echoing through the training ground. The orange-haired man raises his arm in a triumphant roar, celebrating his apparent victory. Millie looks down from the balcony with a contemplative sigh, observing the victorious orange-haired man below. Thwack! The orange-haired man now spars with a skilled blonde opponent, who easily blocks his attack. A narrator notes the blonde man's dedication, remarking that he must have trained daily since childhood, his sword strike as straight as his resolve. The blonde man encourages his opponent, Nelson, not to hold back, but the orange-haired Nelson looks intimidated. With a flurry of motion, the blonde man effortlessly counters Nelson's attack. The blonde man is declared the winner over the defeated Nelson. Millie checks her list of potential husbands, but is disappointed to find that Nelson is not on it and wonders if he's already engaged. Professor Chris approaches a startled Millie, asking if she's there to spectate, and she nervously confirms she is. Millie explains she's scouting the night candidates Brad recommended, and an amused Chris asks to see her list. Chris looks over the list with a thoughtful expression, murmuring Brad's name, which makes Millie ask what's wrong. Chris explains why Nelson isn't on the list. As the eldest son and heir to an earl, he can't marry into her family. A dejected Millie then asks about the other men, specifically the blonde one, causing Chris to realize something with a start. As Millie confirms her interest in the blonde man, she's struck by a sudden, powerful feeling of attraction. Chris reveals the man is His Highness Joachim, the first prince, and asks if she's trying to get him fired, leaving Millie to realize she is doomed. Eek! A guard orders someone to leave before they cause a scene, and a terrified Millie flees in a panic. The image of the regal first prince Joachim reappears, with a voice asking if someone is trying to get him fired. Gasp! Millie continues her panicked escape from the training grounds. A narrator reflects that a nation's fate rests on its leader, envisioning the sincere prince becoming the next king. A single thought fills the air, surrounded by pink roses. Millie imagines the prince as a beloved king, waving to his adoring subjects from a grand castle. Lost in the crowd, Millie gazes up at the vision of the future king with wide-eyed admiration. Her eyes sparkle with inspiration as she clenches her fists, captivated by the prince. With pink petals falling around her, Millie stands with a newfound sense of purpose and determination. Millie recounts her disastrous encounter, telling a shocked Ilona and Brad that she was nearly arrested for contempt of royalty. Millie defends herself, explaining it's her first time in the capital, while a stunned Brad expresses disbelief that a noble wouldn't recognize the royal family. Brad correctly guesses Millie has no social experience, but she counters that everyone in her territory is very sociable. She fondly recalls how people in her hometown always stop to chat about simple things like fishing and wild raspberries. Brad advises Millie to avoid the nights for now and kindly offers to teach her about the important people in the capital. Ilona points toward a beautiful blonde woman, explaining that she is Prince Joachim's fiancée. The prince's fiancée, a stunningly beautiful woman with long blonde hair, is seen amidst a field of white flowers. A bewildered Millie asks if she's real, and Ilona introduces her as Lady Louise, the Duke's daughter, remarking on her beauty. Ilona explains that Lady Louise is as rare as a unicorn, having received the finest education and beauty treatments, placing her in a different league entirely. Millie dreamily imagines that a child of Prince Joachim and Lady Louise would be unbelievably divine. Brad shares a rumor that the prince and Lady Louise aren't getting along, noting that their youth and beauty bring many temptations. Looking for a solution, Brad reminds Millie of a ball next week, suggesting it's the perfect chance to find a husband, and she vows to do her best. Brad imagines Millie dancing at the ball, musing that while most would tire, her stamina might just allow her to dance all night. Brad concludes that attire is key for the ball, and Ilona enthusiastically agrees that a dress and makeup are essential. Ilona reminds Millie to buy shoes, which makes Millie recall that her sister Mary had given her spending money for just that. Arriving at a lavish mansion, Ilona apologizes for her parents' nouveau riche taste, warning Millie that the gaudy decor hurts the eyes. The interior of the mansion is revealed to be excessively opulent, gleaming with gold and intricate designs. As Ilona laments her parents' refusal to tone down the decor, Millie admits she's terrified to even move, fearing she'll break something expensive. Ilona explains that her father displays artifacts from the fallen kingdom of Muatoria out of sadness, but Millie can't recall what that was. The narrator explains that the kingdom of Muatoria, destroyed 20 years ago, was located between two other kingdoms. The narration continues, describing Muatoria's renowned artisans and the lingering resentment some hold against the Rothenhaupt kingdom for not intervening. Millie expresses her sadness that a country that created such beautiful things was destroyed. Changing the subject, Ilona cheerfully grabs Millie's arm, telling her that her room is much more relaxing. In Ilona's lavish bedroom, she explains that high-ranking nobles from traditional families are simply on a different level. Millie agrees, thinking that such refined taste is only acquired through a privileged upbringing, though she finds the room lovely. Ilona reveals that she is engaged to the fourth son of a viscount, admitting he is in a different league entirely. Whoa, Millie is surprised to learn Ilona has a fiancé and eagerly asks what he's like. With a fond smile, Ilona describes her fiancé as a kind gentleman. Millie models a stunning, form-fitting green gown with long gloves, asking for Ilona's opinion. Ilona gushes over how amazing the dress looks on Millie, complimenting how it highlights her features, even if it is quite bold. She continues her praise, noting how the green matches Millie's eyes, and the elegant cut accentuates her tall, slender figure. Millie proudly states that her mother handmade the dress, causing Ilona to marvel at her taste and wonder if she's a high-ranking noble. Millie silently speculates that her mother was likely disowned after a scandalous courtship, admitting she avoids the topic of her parents' love life. Ilona agrees she'd rather not know either. At Ilona's request for a twirl, she compliments Millie's striking posture, comparing it to a royal guard's horse. Ilona asks how to achieve such posture, lamenting that she's never trained, and Millie dryly suggests she try throwing rocks. With a deadpan expression, Millie warns that rock throwing might make her chest disappear, leaving Ilona speechless. Ilona points out that the dress's design makes Millie's bust look bigger, and Millie explains she can't wear a push-up bra because of the open back. Ilona reassures her, saying she doesn't need one and actually looks better without it. On their way to a shoe store, Millie admits she's nervous, but Ilona assures her that everyone there is nice. Millie recounts her sister Mary's cold reception at a fancy store, and Ilona agrees that being made to feel like you don't belong is infuriating. Ilona explains this store is different, with an owner who wants to provide cute, affordable shoes for all girls, even commoners. Millie worries that the money her sister Mary gave her won't be enough for a purchase. Ilona reassures her it's plenty, suggesting she can buy display models or slightly scratched shoes for a lower price. With Ilona leading the way, they confidently enter the shoe store. Ilona greets the shopkeeper, explaining she's there to help her friend find some shoes. Asking for a simple pair that will match any dress, Ilona leaves the selection in the shopkeeper's capable hands. The shopkeeper presents a variety of shoes, advising against very high heels to avoid intimidating potential dance partners. She compliments Millie's beautiful legs, suggesting a simple, classic pair of shoes will accentuate them perfectly. Millie spots a pair of elegant black heels with a bow and instantly decides to take them. Beaming with joy, Millie happily clutches her newly purchased shoes. An unseen person calls for Matilda while a man and a woman have tea. Back at home, Millie excitedly shows off her new shoes with a joyful pose. She twirls gracefully, practicing her dance moves and the new footwear. With a final, elegant pose, she shows off her newfound confidence. Her father applauds, telling Millie her dancing is incredible, and she cheekily asks where she can go to get paid for it. Millie smiles, reflecting on how much fun her impromptu dance practice was. She sits on her bed, contentedly admiring her new shoes. Millie's dream of a feast is interrupted when her father bursts through a curtain, shouting for her to wait. What? To her horror, her father declares she can only eat after memorizing 10 rules for the capital. Overwhelmed, Millie despairs at the cruel task, especially with the feast waiting and the ball so near. What? He explains that others have noted her abilities peak when food is on the line, much to her frustration. Millie jolts awake in bed, shouting, "Feast time." She catches her breath, relieved to realize it was only a nightmare. She recalls how the rules were relentlessly drilled into her before she left for the capital. A list of 10 rules appears, including directives on obeying royalty, pursuing suitors, and a curious command not to jump from windows. The maid, Matilda, lovingly prepares Millie for her first ball, determined to make her look perfect. As part of the preparations, Matilda carefully applies lipstick for Millie. Matilda smiles warmly, noting that Millie has an innate charm that draws people in, just like her mother, Shirley. Millie asks her father, Johnny, for his opinion, and he proudly declares her perfect, joking that he'll have a hard time managing all her dance requests. Her father warns her not to use stones, but Millie cheekily promises she won't bring them today. Millie decides to wear a glass bead bracelet instead, reasoning it's a safe, non-lethal alternative. Her father reminds her that killing people or hunting beasts is strictly forbidden at the ball. Arriving at the grand ball, Millie walks toward the entrance in her elegant green gown. She makes her entrance, standing alone in the magnificent crowded ballroom. Whoa. Millie marvels at the high ceilings and the beautiful attire of the other guests. Her eyes light up as she spots the banquet table, drool forming at the corner of her mouth. Vowing to protect the food table at all costs, her thoughts are interrupted as someone calls out Millie. Ilona appears with her fiancé, introducing him as Hugo Mortensen, the son of a viscount. Ilona then introduces Millie to Hugo as her friend, Muriel Gonzara, and they exchange pleasantries. Ilona and Hugo depart, waving goodbye as Millie waves back with a smile. Inspired by Ilona's cool fiancé, Millie resolves to do her best, but decides to eat before starting her husband hunt. She eagerly approaches a carver station, ready for a slice of roasted meat. A server skillfully carves a thin, delicious-looking slice of meat from a large vertical spit. A perfectly cooked piece of meat is plated with sauce and a side of vegetables. Millie enters a state of pure bliss, savoring the incredible flavor that melts in her mouth without even chewing. Unsure what to do with her plate, a kind server tells her to simply leave it. Millie thanks the server profusely, declaring the capital wonderful after her delicious meal. She stands before a lavish buffet as multiple servers offer her an array of desserts and dishes. The server remarks that he's never seen someone enjoy their food so much and promises to tell the delighted head chef. Upon learning that most food is thrown away, Millie thinks it's a waste and should be given to the poor. The server wistfully agrees that giving the food away would be a wonderful idea, if only it were possible. Realizing she doesn't know anyone, Millie decides she might need to ask Brad for help identifying potential suitors. She and the server look over a list as she frets about having to invite a stranger to dance. Taking a chance, she approaches a man and asks, "Shall we dance?" Suddenly, a voice echoes through the hall and Millie recognizes it as Prince Joachim's as he breaks his engagement with Louise. Prince Joachim confronts Louise, accusing her of being enraged because his love shifted to a woman named Annarina. He shields Annarina protectively, angrily accusing Louise of treating her rudely. Louise demands to know what he means, and he accuses her of insulting Annarina's attire. Louise retorts she was only teaching her about protocol. As the prince argues that there's no hierarchy in school, Louise dismisses it as a formality, leaving Millie stunned by the public argument. Millie watches the tense confrontation, wondering why nobody is stepping in to stop the scene. She observes the woman in red, Annarina, sensing a bad aura and suspecting she might be a witch. Onlookers whisper that Prince Joachim has been deceived by a witch and has lost his mind, with his aides also under her spell. Millie recalls a critical rule: a loyal subject must guide their superior to the correct path if their command is unconvincing. With purpose, she removes a single blue bead from her glass bracelet. Thwip! She flicks the bead with incredible speed and precision. Thwack! The bead strikes Prince Joachim squarely on the temple, knocking him unconscious. As the prince collapses, a smirking Annarina thinks to herself, "Okay, took him down." Millie immediately prepares her next move, ready to strike again. Her second shot takes down the woman in red, leaving the onlookers completely shocked as both she and the prince lie unconscious. With the situation handled, Millie decides it's time to leave, thinking there's no need to stay longer. She calmly walks away from the chaos as two shocked ladies watch her go. Outside the palace, she reflects on her actions, defeating the prince and fleeing the scene, and wonders if she did the right thing. Recalling her father's advice, she laments her failed husband Hunt before a hooded figure bumps into her. Eek! Startled, Millie watches as he steps into the light of a lamppost and offers his apologies again. The prince extends a hand toward her, asking if she is all right. A gentle breeze blows as the prince waits for her response, his hand still outstretched. After she says goodbye, the prince watches her leave, noting to himself that she didn't have that girl's scent. The scene transitions with an image of delicate, glowing blue flowers. The server, standing at the bottom of a grand staircase, thinks to himself that serving the strange young lady made him late to act. He wonders how Millie moved so fast, arriving like a shadow to secure the perfect position, and concludes that she is no ordinary person. He recalls how satisfying it was to watch her eat, which caused him to let her go. But now he seriously wonders if she is an enemy from a rival nation. Realizing the situation is bad, he recalls that his orders from His Majesty were simply to observe. Elsewhere, a blonde man named Alfred reassures a woman that he was worried about her but initially thought Prince Joachim was just having a side affair. Now, however, he realizes the prince's claim to the throne is in jeopardy. In a flashback, Millie holds a glowing bead, contemplating whether she should step in and stop the prince. Damn it! An onlooker curses as Millie's bead flies with lightning speed across the ballroom, striking a shocked Prince Joachim. In the crowd, a masked man in black and a noblewoman in pink stare in disbelief at the sudden turn of events. A hand deftly catches the ricocheting bead as Millie flees, pursued by two shadowy figures. The server, now revealed as an operative, decides to report directly to His Majesty, leaving the rest of the situation to his colleagues. An unseen man holds the glass bead, musing over the news that Prince Joachim broke his engagement and was then knocked unconscious by this simple marble. Holding the bead, the king's younger brother, Alfred Rothenhaupt, finds the situation fascinating and wonders if the mysterious young lady's name is Al. A blonde noblewoman urges Alfred to be more serious, recounting how Prince Joachim was incited by a baron's daughter and publicly insulted Lady Louise. King Ernst Rothenhaupt declares that the nation could be torn apart if they don't handle the scandal carefully. The king asks if they've captured the baron's daughter, suggesting they pin the blame on her, but the noblewoman notes that it depends on the reactions of Lady Louise and her father. The king resolves that if the situation worsens, he will have to entrust the throne to his brother Al. Alfred sits alone, contemplating the king's heavy words. Holding the bead that reflects the king's face, Alfred asks for that girl, as a reward for resolving the crisis. The king clarifies if he means the captured baron's daughter. Alfred smiles slyly, holding the bead up to his eye with intrigue. The king states he must conduct a thorough investigation, starting with why the girl attacked Prince Joachim before making any decisions. Alfred turns to a dark-haired man, asking what the girl was like since he was the one closest to her. The man, identified as Dan, a shadow of the royal family, confirms he was, recalling a smiling Millie thanking him for the meal. Dan reports that he found her to be a straightforward and vital person. Alfred, surprised by the rare praise from Dan, asks about her reason for coming to the capital. Dan explains she came to find a wealthy, knowledgeable husband and obtain a large dowry, listing fields like medicine, law, and engineering. The king deduces that she wasn't targeting Prince Joachim as a potential husband. Alfred asks Dan if he thinks she has audacious ambitions, but Dan disagrees. Alfred's expression brightens as he recalls seeing a list of princess candidates, finding the idea very interesting. He urges his brother, the king, to summon the girl, noting the candidate list was full of capable but low-status nobles, and that meeting her is the best approach. When the king considers getting married himself, Alfred dismisses the idea, reminding him that a princess from a neighboring country is already waiting for him. Alfred shudders at the thought of his brother with such a woman and asks if he's seriously considering marrying Millie. The king gazes at the bead and admits he's wondering about it. The king tells Alfred to know his place, while Dan reminds the king he is settling a national crisis and deserves a reward for it. A weary king agrees to see the girl before deciding, and a delighted Alfred holds him to that promise. The king instructs them to handle all the necessary arrangements. As Dan bows in acceptance, a triumphant Alfred smiles, pleased with how things are unfolding. Back in her room, Millie fondly reminisces about the delicious food from the ball. While describing the jewel-like desserts and savory meats to her maid, the maid cheekily asks if there were any handsome men. Millie lies on her bed, staring at the ceiling as she replays the night's events in her mind. She recalls seeing the elegant Lady Louise at the ball. Her thoughts drift back to the delicious plate of roasted meat she enjoyed. She remembers worrying about Alana's first dance, before her thoughts fixate on the mysterious hooded man she met outside. Blushing in bed, Millie thinks that even though she couldn't see his face clearly, he seemed very handsome. The next morning, students gather before the school's ornate gates, where a notice has been posted. A green-eyed boy wishes Millie a good morning, and she asks what is happening. He explains that classes are canceled for the entire week, prompting a confused Millie to ask why. Millie suddenly gasps as a terrible realization dawns on her. She panics, remembering that she knocked out the prince and now fears she's going to be arrested. Millie asks again why classes are canceled, still processing her shock. A fellow student explains it's to deal with the uproar from the ball, and as the memory of the unconscious prince returns, Millie nervously understands. The green-eyed boy notes the library is still open and invites Millie to go with him to borrow a book. Millie enthusiastically agrees, but asks him to tell her about the bride candidates instead. He knowingly says, sure. A profile appears for Franz Mackinson, a baron's fourth son, and Millie thinks that while his dowry might be small, he seems healthy enough to be a contender. Millie eagerly tells her friend to go get him, and he bids her farewell until tomorrow. Nod, Millie daydreams about gallantly swooping in to save Franz from a magical beast. As a young man with glasses drops his book, a carriage speeds recklessly down the path behind him. A voice cries, "Look out!" As Millie springs into action, swoosh, Millie tackles the man with glasses to the ground just as the speeding carriage rushes past. Holding the man protectively, Millie looks up with wide, concerned eyes. The man adjusts his glasses, asking Millie if she's all right and unhurt. Millie offers her hand to help him up, and the blushing man thanks her. She offers to compensate him for his dirty clothes, but he insists it's nothing a little wash won't fix. The flustered young man hesitates for a moment before agreeing. After she returns his handkerchief, he simply says thank you and leaves, causing Millie to despair over how dense he is for not even asking her name. Elsewhere, Alfred Rothenhaupt contemplates that, with the engagement now off, he will have no choice but to inherit the throne. Looking at a book about Lady Louise, he smirks, wondering how he can use her romantic heart to his advantage against Duke Enger's political maneuvering. Alfred clenches his fist, realizing he'll have to steel his own resolve for what's to come. Gazing out a sunlit window, he smiles and decides he should probably go and meet her. The scene shifts to a handsome man with long, dark brown hair tied in a ponytail, walking confidently. He and two companions walk through a forest, as one mentions that they usually hunt near the lake. Meanwhile, Alfred muses that a simple smile makes women chatter, hoping she isn't one of them, as that would be a disappointment. Alfred acknowledges that his face and royal connection are convenient tools, but secretly wishes someone could see his true self beyond the surface. Thump, thump, thump. Back in the forest, the long-haired man's peaceful walk is interrupted by a charging boar. A boar. His companions panic as the beast rushes toward them, leaping high into the sky. Millie prepares to intercept the creature. Thwack! With a powerful overhead strike, she slams a massive rock onto the boar's head, killing it instantly. The long-haired man asks if she's hurt, but Millie simply turns and says, "Number." She effortlessly throws the dead boar over her shoulder and tells the stunned men to follow her. The three men watch in disbelief as Millie carries the heavy boar toward the river. At the water's edge, Millie presents a small, glowing blue stone and addresses the gentlemen. She sternly informs them that perfume is strictly forbidden in the forest and warns them not to do it again. As she cleans her dagger, she scolds them, explaining the boar's tusk could have killed them in an instant. She reveals the boar was a mother protecting her piglets and wouldn't have died if they hadn't trespassed. Millie explains that the baby boars are now motherless and may not survive, making the long-haired man flush with shame. The long-haired man sincerely apologizes for his curiosity and promises never to enter the forest again. Millie looks at him and agrees, stating this is no place for a nobleman's son. She compares her calloused hand to his smooth one, pointing out the clear difference between them. Millie correctly identifies his bodyguard, but comments that he gives off a strange vibe, making the guard flinch. As evening approaches, she offers to walk them to the entrance of town. The long-haired man stops her, insisting on giving her a token of gratitude for saving them. Millie brushes it off as simply helping someone in trouble, but he insists, saying he wouldn't feel right otherwise. With a sly smile, Millie suggests that, as repayment, he could introduce her to any eligible nobleman he knows. He agrees to her proposition, promising to introduce her to someone, which makes Millie light up. She happily introduces herself as Mayuriel Gonzara, or Millie, from a family of barons. The long-haired man smiles warmly and asks if he might be considered a candidate himself. Millie excitedly welcomes the idea, but notes his high rank might make moving to her territory difficult. He confidently states he will make the arrangements. Overjoyed, Millie says she'll be waiting but will try not to get her hopes up. The long-haired man waves goodbye, promising, "Please wait for me, Millie." Carrying the boar, Millie walks off into the sunset toward a distant castle. A long-haired man blushes, clutching his collar as he thinks to himself, "I want you, Millie." Millie wishes a good morning to a green-eyed boy named Brad, who comments on her energy. Millie proudly declares she rescued 4 men yesterday, and Brad asks her to tell him everything. Brad dismisses Franz as a prospect, but is intrigued by the high-ranking noble, while Millie tries not to get her hopes up. Brad says he'll keep tailing Franz anyway. Brad points toward a blonde young man, identifying him as a new candidate, Matthias Cooper, a baron's second son. Observing Matthias, Millie thinks to herself that he seems intelligent. An enthusiastic Millie tells Brad she's off to tail her new prospect. As Millie runs down the sunlit hall, a dark, ominous silhouette watches her from the shadows. The scene shifts to the interior of a grand library. Clenching her fists, Millie eagerly anticipates meeting another marriage candidate. Millie greets Brad at the library the next day, noticing he seems a little down. Brad explains his disappointment, saying no marriage candidates are coming today, which ruins a new plan he and Matilda had devised. Looking away with a sad expression, Brad announces he won't be able to come to the library starting tomorrow. Millie cheerfully waves goodbye, suggesting he can just teach her again when the academy reopens, and he agrees. As Brad reads, his face obscured, 2 shadowy figures approach his table. A hooded man asks if his work is satisfactory. Brad confirms that His Highness will surely be pleased. The hooded man tells Brad to think about what kind of job he'd like at the royal palace, leaving him with a somber expression. Elsewhere, Prince Alfred reads, thinking he needs one more move against Joachim to avoid inheriting the throne. Reading Muriel's surveillance report, Alfred is stunned to learn her maternal grandfather is Viscount Silentia, a solitary noble with no faction. The scene transitions to a magnificent, sprawling white castle under a clear sky. Alfred greets Viscount Richard Silentia, apologizing for the sudden summons. Viscount Silentia, a blond man with a goatee, formally introduces himself and states he is at the prince's service. Alfred smiles and declares that he will be direct with the Viscount. With a sincere expression, Alfred asks for his help to marry into the Gonzara family. The Viscount is flabbergasted, asking if this is some kind of joke or if the prince is already drunk. Alfred brings up Joachim's collapse at the ball, which the Viscount confirms is under investigation for unknown causes. Presenting a small, glowing glass marble, Alfred reveals it as the cause, shocking the Viscount. Alfred smiles disarmingly and asks the Viscount to pardon his impertinence. After a tense pause, the Viscount clenches his fist on the table and asks what Alfred desires. Alfred reveals his condition. For him to marry into Muriel's family, Joachim must inherit the throne. When Alfred offers to mediate with Lady Louise, the Viscount states that he will handle that part himself. Alfred explains the deal. The Viscount will join Duke Andal's faction, wielding great power as the grandfather of the king's brother-in-law. Leaning in with a confident smile, Alfred assures him that it shouldn't be a bad deal. The Viscount seethes with rage, remembering his beloved daughter Charlotte being taken by that mountain ape Robert Gonzara. He recalls lovingly raising Charlotte to be a perfect lady. A memory shows Charlotte eloping, running hand in hand with a man into the sunset. Alfred watches the Viscount, thinking about how Lord Robert snatched Charlotte away. The Viscount laments that he prepared the greatest happiness for his daughter, only to hear that Muriel has received no proper lady's education. Alfred counters that Lord Robert and Lady Charlotte raised a daughter capable of capturing the king's own brother. The Viscount stares at Alfred's outstretched hand, deep in thought. Alfred sweetens the deal, promising him a front-row seat at his wedding to Muriel, causing the Viscount to sigh. The Viscount humbly accepts the offer, sealing the deal with a handshake. The scene changes to the front of a lavish multi-story estate. Inside, Prince Alfred sits with Duke Andal, apologizing for the sudden visit. Duke Norman Andal formally introduces himself and expresses his honor at the prince's visit. Alfred assures the Duke that Joachim will apologize to Lady Louise later, but the Duke remains silent and unconvinced. The Duke states his 2 conditions for cooperation, the first being the rights to the Lonsel mine. His second condition is that Viscount Silentia must join his faction. The Duke and Alfred share a tense look, their eyes meeting in a silent battle of wits. Alfred calmly states that while he doesn't need an immediate answer, he'd like one in the near future. Prince Alfred's carriage departs from the grand estate, its mission complete. Lady Louise sits alone in a carriage, her expression somber. Prince Alfred asks Lady Louise to wait, assuring her she won't have to for long. He asks her to listen to Joachim's true feelings before making a decision. Alfred explains that she can see and hear everything from the mirror, where Joachim sits dejectedly. Alfred enters the room, asking Joachim if he's thinking clearly. Now, Joachim addresses him as Uncle Alfred. Joachim laments his actions, and Alfred confirms his mistake, asking what he plans to do. When asked if he still loves the Baron's daughter, Joachim denies it, stating he feels nothing for Annalena anymore. Overwhelmed with regret, Joachim wonders why he ruined things when he was so excited to marry Louise. Hearing his confession, Lady Louise blushes with hope, surrounded by blooming flowers. Joachim admits he felt immense pressure to be a perfect prince beside the perfect Lady Louise. He confesses his heart was weak, but he now realizes he wanted Louise to accept him, flaws and all. Alfred instructs Joachim to grovel and beg for Lady Louise's forgiveness, asking her to love all of him. With a gentle smile, Alfred asks Lady Louise if she will listen to the crybaby. Lady Louise stands at the door, her hand on the handle, ready to enter. Alfred leaves the room, closing the grand door behind him to give the couple privacy. A hand presents Alfred with a framed portrait of the pink-haired Annalena. The scene shifts, marked by a view of delicate tree branches. Two women gossip, one revealing that Prince Joachim is under house arrest while the other seems unimpressed. An orange-haired young woman lectures someone that they'll never find romance if they're more interested in food. Muriel retorts about her friend's fiancé, but the girl smugly admits she essentially bought him with money. As Muriel asks about love, her friend pragmatically states that where there's money, there's love. A handsome man approaches Muriel, asking if she is Lady Muriel Gonzara, causing her to squeal internally. Flustered, Muriel shyly confirms her identity. As he offers his hand, she marvels to herself that this is a real proper escort. Muriel gives a confident thumbs up as her starstruck friend watches from behind. Muriel asks where they are going, and the man reveals he's escorting her to the royal castle to meet His Majesty. She asks why, but her escort politely states he is not at liberty to say. Muriel clutches her head in a full-blown panic, frantically wondering what to do. A carriage wheel turns, signaling their departure for the castle. Inside the carriage, the man reiterates that he will guide her to the royal castle where the king awaits. Muriel anxiously asks why, but the man says he cannot tell her himself. Panicking, Muriel wonders if she should feign fainting and try to run away. She realizes it's hopeless, as they've already discovered her identity and would catch her easily. She sinks into despair, concluding this is the worst possible scenario. The carriage arrives before the grand, sunlit royal castle. Standing before her escort, Muriel nervously wonders if she is about to die. Resigned to her fate, she thinks she should have eaten more sweets in the capital. Kneeling on the floor of a vast hall, Muriel tearfully regrets saving her allowance instead of spending it. A blond man on a throne identifies her as Muriel Gonzara and commands her to raise her head. The man, the king, holds up the glowing blue glass bead and asks if it belongs to her. Staring at the evidence, Muriel realizes, with sheer terror, that they know everything. Convinced she's doomed, she grimaces and concludes that she's going to be executed. She silently says goodbye to her parents, sister, and numerous younger siblings. The king asks why she did it, and Muriel admits she thought Prince Joachim had lost his senses. He agrees her judgment wasn't wrong, but her methods were poor, causing her to flinch. The king smiles, explaining that more disgrace from Joachim would have led to his disinheritance. He declares that he will treat her actions as no charge, and Muriel looks up in shock. Praising her fine skill, the king offers her a position in the Knight Order. Muriel smiles brightly and politely declines, stating she wishes to return to her own people. The king accepts her decision and offers to send a reward, asking if there is anything specific she desires. Millie realizes she can ask for a reward. She brightly requests a very large dowry. Her audacious request stuns the entire court. An attendant introduces himself as Jack. He leads her into a magnificent room. Millie recognizes a portrait of Prince Joachim. She then wonders about a second, unfamiliar portrait, Alfred Rothenhaupt. Alfred reveals he is the king's younger brother. He reminds her that she helped him in the forest. The prince insists she call him Al. Al declares he's ready to marry her anytime. What? His proposal echoes through the hall. He offers cake to calm the flustered Millie. Millie complains her drink is too cold. Alfred thoughtfully considers her comment. He offers her a small bite of cake. Alfred then sensually eats the piece himself. Millie is stunned by his forward behavior. He smiles warmly as she nervously eats. She finds him distracting. He finds her amusing. She wonders why a handsome royal wants her. She realizes she said that out loud. Millie panics as he points out her expressiveness. He promises she'll get used to being held daily. Leaning closer, he calls her, "My princess." Flustered, she questions his smooth words. She admits she just doesn't know how to react. He gently tells her to react however she likes. His touch catches her completely off guard. She's utterly overwhelmed and blushing. Why? She melts into an embarrassed puddle. As he laughs, she begs him to stop teasing. She tries to explain his actions make her uneasy. He calmly suggests visiting her parents tomorrow. Alfred prefers to ask for her parents' blessing. She doubts his seriousness, but he is confident. He explains that any delay could cause trouble. He coolly declares her his fiancée to all. A voice advises her to think during the long journey. Ignoring the advice, Alfred vows to come tomorrow. A flustered Millie reluctantly agrees. A grand royal carriage arrives for her. Onlookers murmur as the procession passes. A long line of carriages fills the street. A servant rings a bell, announcing an arrival. Alfred waves cheerfully, announcing he's here for Millie. Her shocked friends demand to know what's happening. Millie excitedly greets her friends, Ilona and Brad. Alfred waits serenely amidst a field of flowers. An older couple tearfully asks someone to take care of Millie as the man's soul comically flies from his mouth. A blonde girl named Millie tightly hugs a brown-haired woman goodbye. Holding on, Millie tearfully asks if they will see each other again. Prince Alfred appears, promising Millie they'll hold a wedding there too, much to her surprise. The brown-haired woman checks on Millie, who admits she's confused but will be okay. The woman smiles warmly, making a promise in return. They link pinkies, giggling, as they promise to always be friends. Brad offers his support, and the woman thanks him for all his help. Brad insists it was his pleasure because they're friends, and they clasp hands warmly. A single suitcase sits packed and ready, signifying the imminent departure. The woman shares a final tight group hug with the older couple. She takes one last look back at her friends and family before leaving with the prince. Waving from a grand carriage, she promises she will come back one day. She falls asleep on Prince Alfred's shoulder, feeling a sense of warmth and peace. Alfred recalls a past trauma, remembering how an irritating princess made him break out in hives. A flashback shows a younger Alfred surrounded by girls who were drawn to his princely status. He remembers their overpowering perfumes, mixing into a stench in his memory. At a garden party, the overwhelming scents became too much, and he started vomiting. A younger Alfred tells his father he doesn't want the engagement. His father sternly reminds him that marriage is a royal duty he cannot refuse. He remembers Rachel's unsettling gaze, comparing her to a poisonous, carnivorous flower. After discovering Rachel was using aphrodisiacs, he and Jack devised a plan to escape the engagement. They proposed a private tea party without attendance, which Rachel eagerly accepted. Rachel expresses her delight at being alone with him and asks to call him Fufu. Alfred gently rebuffs her advance, warning her about the gossip of nobles. Rachel smiles slyly, calling him kind for his concern. Internally criticizing her harlot attire, he notices a drop of red liquid in his teacup. A shadowy hand pours more of the strange red tea, as Rachel offers him another cup. He only pretends to drink the tea, dabbing his mouth with a handkerchief. Feigning dizziness, he deliberately spills the teacup on the table. Rachel rushes to his side with feigned concern, as he complains of feeling unwell. She gently guides him to lie down and rest on a nearby chaise. Her red eyes gleam with lust as she looks down at him. Leaning over him, she promises to make him feel better, calling him my Fufu. He weakly pushes back, telling Rachel to stop because it isn't right. She aggressively insists that the act itself will bind them, regardless of marriage. Sweating and desperate, Alfred silently calls for Jack to come now. His internal plea grows more frantic as he begs Jack to hurry. Bam! The door bursts open, revealing a shocked man who asks what is going on. The man, Jack, and 2 guards storm the room, catching Rachel in the act. In the aftermath, the king reprimands Alfred for not rejecting the proposal sooner. The ensuing scandal over the princess's shameless conduct led to the engagement's collapse. Following the incident, Alfred focused solely on his duties to regain his place at court. He reflects that while his brother asked about his desire to marry, he never forced him. Back in the present, the brown-haired woman wakes up from her nap in the carriage. Prince Alfred pulls her into a gentle, heartfelt embrace among a field of white roses. Resting his head against her, he thinks to himself that she smells like comforting sunlight. The brown-haired woman wonders if her natural scent comes from drying her laundry outside. She tells Prince Alfred he can wear perfume when he's not in the forest, and he gently reminds her to call him Millie. A beautiful purple perfume bottle sits among pink roses. A court lady reads a document explaining that, due to Prince Alfred's sensitive nose, only approved scents are allowed near him. In a dark reflection, Alfred recalls finding peace in his quiet, uneventful days. The image of the castle shatters as he realizes that his peace is now over. A stone flies through the air, shattering the ornate mirror and revealing Millie within its reflection. Millie smiles gently, her face and eyes reflected in the sparkling shards of broken glass. Portraits show a stoic Prince Alfred and a joyfully laughing Millie. Alfred sits with a happy Millie on his lap, her arm wrapped comfortably around his shoulders. She playfully pokes his cheek, calling him Al twice. From a carriage, a blonde woman cheerfully encourages Millie to say the prince's nickname properly 10 times. Alfred leans in, telling Millie that from now on, every time she says, "Prince Alfred," he will kiss her on the cheek, giving her a charming wink. Stunned, Millie shouts in protest as the two men driving the carriage look on in shock. Blushing furiously, she asks him if he isn't embarrassed to say such a thing. Alfred bursts into hearty laughter at her flustered reaction. The scene shifts to a man with a goatee sitting worriedly at a large desk. A young man bursts in to announce a messenger from the royal family, causing the man at the desk to jump in shock. The red-haired royal messenger stands at attention, presented by the younger man. The man with the goatee introduces himself as Robert Gonzara and asks about the royal family's business. The messenger introduces himself as Matthew Gabler, Prince Alfred's attendant and guard. Robert Gonzaga reads the letter delivered by Matthew, his expression growing more concerned. Robert asks when the prince will arrive, and Matthew informs him it will be in 2 days at the earliest. Matthew relays the prince's wish for them to act normally, but Robert thinks that will be impossible. Matthew explains that the prince is completely smitten with Lady Muriel. He adds that the prince fears imposing on her family, which only deepens Robert's concern. Matthew correctly guesses Robert is thinking he should have been told sooner. Pledging his full support, Matthew declares he will assist the family in any way he can. Robert smiles, relieved, and expresses his gratitude for the offer. When Matthew asks to see the family, Robert reveals they are already listening from the doorway, much to Matthew's surprise. Robert announces to his gathered family that Millie has captured Prince Alfred's heart. He declares that the prince and Millie will arrive in 2 days, sending the family into a panic. Springing into action, Robert rallies everyone and orders Harry to ring the bell 6 times. A young boy explains that 6 rings of the bell signals a domain-threatening crisis and summons all their people. 2 young women look on in dismay, realizing they must welcome royalty in just 2 days. The children panic, one blaming Millie for the chaos as their father urges Harry to go. The great bell of the town's clock tower rings out across the land. Robert stands at a podium, preparing to address the assembled townspeople. He officially announces that Millie is returning in 2 days with her fiancé, Prince Alfred. The crowd murmurs in disbelief, wondering how and why this could be true. A man speculates it's due to the secret techniques the old ladies taught Millie. An elderly woman dramatically states they are prepared to die if this is not a joyous occasion, leaving Matthew to wonder what is wrong with this domain. Robert issues his first command. For 1 week, no one is allowed to die. He shouts that they can't possibly hold a funeral during the prince's visit. The townspeople agree to be careful not to die, which only bewilders Matthew further. The third priority is announced. Offer up the finest food and alcohol. Robert specifically requests something that will suit the palate of their guest Matthew. He continues with the 4th order. All skilled cooks are to gather with Charlotte. Finally, he commands everyone with free hands to gather at the mansion tomorrow to help with repairs and cleaning. Robert declares they will muster their full strength to entertain the prince. Rallying the crowd, Robert shouts for everyone to work themselves to death, and they cheer in agreement. Matthew internally apologizes to the prince, admitting he's powerless to stop the domain's fervor. Days later, a royal carriage approaches as a blonde woman calls out for Millie. Prince Alfred suggests a walk to a tired-looking Millie, who seems surprised by the offer. Alfred and Millie stand together, gazing across a vast, sun-drenched field of wildflowers. Taking her hand, Alfred tells Millie he wants to get to know her better. Surrounded by blooming flowers, Alfred asks Millie what her favorite color is. Millie thoughtfully replies that her favorite color is green, like the forest. Alfred then asks about her favorite animal, and Millie bluntly states she likes to eat minotaur. Stunned by her answer, Alfred quickly asks about an animal she doesn't eat. Millie cheerfully says she likes dogs because they're useful company, much to Alfred's delight. She admits she dislikes any season but winter since she can't hunt then, and Alfred asks if the winters are harsh. She smiles, explaining that in winter, it's simply snow all the time. A flashback shows their large mansion covered in snow. As Millie explains they're always busy preparing for winter, she reassures Alfred not to worry since everyone is used to it, adding there's another reason for their preparations. Millie explains that when travelers occasionally arrive, it's considered a huge deal. Alfred asks if it's for new stories, but Millie clarifies they also hope to convince newcomers to settle there. She states plainly that their secluded domain needs new blood to thrive. Turning to look over the hills, Millie explains their need to attract as many new people as possible. Alfred closes his eyes, quietly absorbing her words. Back at the mansion, Robert asks Matthew about the size of the royal party, learning there are 10 people in total. Robert arranges for lodging in the mansion and nearby houses, which Matthew gratefully accepts. When Robert asks about the prince's meal preferences, Matthew insists that the same food as everyone else is perfectly fine. Sensing Robert's doubt, Matthew explains that the prince genuinely wishes to blend in with them. Matthew smiles, politely requesting that they continue with their normal routines. He then cheekily adds that the prince will, however, be wearing shoes, much to Robert's flustered agreement. The royal procession finally arrives at the domain's gates, welcomed by the assembled townspeople. Watching the scene unfold, Millie panics internally, admitting she has no idea how to welcome royalty either. Robert formally welcomes the prince, while Alfred smiles serenely beside a very nervous Millie. Millie apologizes internally for her family, who stand stiffly with forced smiles, her father even wearing a blindfold. Millie thoughtfully asks Alfred if he's tired, calling him Al, and shocking a nearby young boy. A hand rests on Millie's shoulder as a serious voice calls her name. Her father, Robert, glares down at her, demanding to know the meaning of the situation. Standing before the family mansion, he once again presses Millie for an explanation. Now seated before her entire family, Millie remains silent as her father again asks what this all means. Millie admits she doesn't understand either. As her brother demands, she explain everything from the beginning. In a series of chibi flashbacks, Millie quickly recounts her shocking adventures at the royal court. Her frantic, chibi-style story concludes with her and Alfred embracing under a rainbow, leaving her father sweating. One of her brothers skeptically asks if the prince truly intends to rule over their weak territory. Overwhelmed, Millie clutches her head and yells that she doesn't know the answer. The entire family sits in stunned, anxious silence, staring at Millie from across the table. Millie cheerfully deflects, telling her exasperated father to just ask the prince himself later. Finally composed, Millie introduces her blindfolded mother, Charlotte, her father Robert, her sister Martina, and her husband Tonio. She then gestures to her 4 brothers, who offer a mix of shy and enthusiastic greetings. Alfred formally introduces himself to the awestruck family, insisting they call him Al. Glowing with happiness, Alfred announces that he couldn't wait another moment to marry Millie and came immediately. The word marry hits the family like a lightning bolt, knocking the souls right out of them. Alfred cheerfully suggests skipping the engagement and discussing details after their meal, casually calling Robert father-in-law. The family gathers for a grand meal with the prince. In unison, the family gives thanks for the stone and meat. Alfred partakes in the meal, seated beside his attendant. Intrigued, Alfred asks about the unique prayer he just heard. Her father apologetically explains it's a local tradition spoken from habit. Alfred smiles, remarking that they truly are the people of the stone. He expresses his excitement to learn more of their interesting traditions. Millie cheerfully serves drinks as the pleasant meal continues. Addressing everyone's worries, Millie decides to clarify the situation. Alfred calmly announces he will not inherit their territory. Tonio explains Alfred will bring a dowry and they'll move to a royal domain after marrying. Tonio confirms that is the place he will govern, promising to discuss details with Robert later. Alfred assures them he will take Millie's wishes into account. He even offers to let Millie stay permanently if she wishes, surprising her. Alfred announces they will be staying for a few years regardless. He explains his desire to learn governance by interacting directly with the people. Later, Robert sits down to speak privately with His Highness Alfred. Robert asks him directly if he truly wishes to marry Muriel. Alfred smiles, confirming he does if Millie will have him. As Robert grants permission, Alfred interjects, vowing to marry into their family as a house husband. Her father protests, shocked, stating there is no precedent for such a marriage. Alfred calmly declares he will be the first, but suggests a few steps to appease onlookers. He reveals they have valid reasons to grant Millie a title, starting with her freeing Joachim from brainwashing. Alfred continues, listing how she saved his life and averted multiple crises for the royal family. He fondly recalls the time she saved him from a wild boar. He outlines a plan to elevate Millie's title from Baroness to Viscount, and then to Earl. Alfred offers to grant Millie any land she desires, but her father worries it would undermine royal prestige. Alfred reveals that political arrangements have already been made with another noble. He explains how this alliance will create the largest political faction, securing the royal family's power. As Robert understands the implications, Alfred states the royal family will now be unshakable. With fierce determination, Alfred declares he will do anything to win Millie and asks for his trust. Robert slams his fists on the table, conceding to the prince's plan. With a simple plea, Robert asks him to make Millie happy. Alfred gratefully accepts. Alfred vows to make Millie even happier, knowing she already finds joy through her own strength. He seals his promise by formally addressing Robert as father-in-law. Walking together, Alfred asks if Millie needs anything, admitting he just wants to see her more. He compliments her local attire, and she giggles with delight. Holding hands, Alfred asks for a tour, noting he's only ever seen her in formal wear. Millie explains her territory is a walled, circular town, much like the capital. She points to the high walls, explaining the 8 gates are kept closed against magical beasts. Millie adds that each gate has a watchtower, always manned by 2 guards. A guard spots a pack of beasts, highlighting the danger and the necessity of their watch. When Alfred asks about beast attacks, Millie explains they use catapults or her father's magic sword for strong ones. She describes the magic sword, which can only be wielded by the Lord's bloodline, the daughters of the forest. Her green eyes widen in a moment of realization. Alfred gently touches her face, confirming her thought. She too is a daughter of the forest. Flustered, Millie remembers that her brothers, father, and grandmother also qualify. She clarifies that her brother Jay is the heir, as a woman can't fight while pregnant in their dangerous land. Millie brings up the local custom of offering a hunted beast to a marriage partner. She shyly begins to make her offer. As a true daughter of the forest, Millie explains a local tradition. Offering the first beast killed with a magic sword ensures a happy marriage. With sparkling eyes, she earnestly tells Alfred she will hunt something to offer him. Alfred gently takes her hand in his. Worried, he asks her not to do anything dangerous, suggesting she just hunt a rabbit. She cheerfully agrees, but internally worries that hunting a mere rabbit will disappoint everyone. The scene shifts to a silver-haired woman tending to an injured Millie in the forest. Recognizing the sound of a hunting horn blown 6 times, Millie looks up in alarm. She sprints through the forest, telling Alfred to wait at the residence as he chases after her. Alfred insists on coming with her. As they run hand in hand, he makes her promise never to go beyond the walls, and she agrees.